Let's continue with the tale of Despereaux. Chapter 11. The Threadmaster Cometh. When Despereaux came to, he heard the drum. His father was beating a rhythm that had much more boom and much less tact. Together, Lester and the drum produced an ominous sound that went something like boom, 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 tat, boom, 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 tat. "Make way for the thread!" cried a mouse who was pushing a wooden spool of red thread through the crowd. "Make way for the thread!" Boom, 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 tap went the drum. "To the dungeon!" shouted the mice. Despereaux lay on his back, blinking his eyes. How, he wondered, had things gone so terribly wrong? Wasn't it a good thing to love? In the story in the book, love was a very good thing, because the knight loved the maiden. He was able to rescue her. They lived happily ever after. It said so in the book. They were the last words on the page. Happily ever after. Despereaux was certain that he had read exactly those words time and time again. Lying on the floor with the drum beating and the mice shouting and the threadmaster calling out, "Make way! Make way!" Despereaux had a sudden chilling thought. Had some other mouse eaten the words that spoke the truth? Did the knight and the fair maiden really not live happily ever after? Reader, do you believe that there is such a thing as happily ever after? Or, like Despereaux, have you, too, begun to question the possibility of happy endings? "Happily ever after," whispered Despereaux. "Happily ever after," he said again as a spool of thread came to a stop beside him. "The thread, the thread, the thread," murmured the mice. "I'm sorry," said the mouse behind the spool, "but I have to ask you to stand up. I have to do my job." Despereaux got slowly to his feet. "On your hind legs, please," said the threadmaster. "It's the rules." Despereaux stood on his hind legs. "Thank you," said the mouse. "I appreciate it." While Despereaux watched, the threadmaster unwound a length of red thread from the spool and tied a loop. "Just enough for the neck," muttered the mouse. "No more, no less. That's what the last threadmaster taught me, enough thread for the neck." He looked up at Despereaux and then back down at the loop of thread. "And you, my friend, have a small neck." The threadmaster raised his arms and then put them around Despereaux's neck. He leaned in close, and Despereaux smelled celery. He could smell the threadmaster's breath in his ear as he worked at tightening the thread. "Is she beautiful?" the threadmaster whispered. "What?" said Despereaux. "Shh! Is the princess beautiful?" "The Princess P?" "Yes. She is lovely beyond all imagining," said Despereaux. "Just right," the threadmaster said. He drew back. He nodded his head. "A lovely princess, just so, like a fairy tale. And you love her, as a knight loves a maiden. You love her with a courtly love, a love that is based on bravery and courtesy and honor and devotion. Just so." "How do you know that?" Despereaux said. "How do you know about fairy tales?" "Shh!" The mouse leaned in close, and Despereaux smelled celery again, green and alive. Be brave, friend," whispered the threadmaster. "Be brave for the princess." And then he stepped back and turned and shouted, "Fellow mice, the thread has been tied. The thread has been knotted." A roar of approval went up from the crowd. Despereaux squared his shoulders. He had made a decision. He would do as the threadmaster had suggested. He would be brave for the princess. Even if, reader, could it be true? There was no such thing as happily ever after. Chapter 12. Adieu. The sound of the drum changed again. The final tat disappeared, and it became nothing but boom, 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 boom. Lester used only his tail, bringing it down with great force and seriousness upon the drum. The threadmaster retreated, and as Despereaux stood before them with the red thread around his neck and the 14 members of the Mouse Council perched on the bricks above him, 2 burly mice came forward. Black pieces of cloth covered their heads. There were slits for their eyes. We, said the bigger of the two mice, will escort you to the dungeon. Despereaux, Antoinette called out. Ah, my Despereaux! Despereaux looked out into the crowd of mice and saw his mother. She was easy to spot. In honor of her youngest mouse being sent to the dungeon, she had put on a tremendous amount of makeup. Each of the hooded mice put a paw on Despereaux's shoulder. It's time, said the one on the left, the first hood. Antoinette pushed her way through the crowd. He is my son, she said. I want to have a last word with my son. Despereaux looked at his mother. He concentrated on standing before her without trembling. He concentrated on not being a disappointment. Please, said Antoinette, what will happen to him? What will happen to my baby? Ma'am, said the first hood. His voice was deep and slow. You don't want to know. I want to know. I want to know. He is my child, the child of my heart, the last of my mouse babies. The hooded mice said nothing. Tell me, said Antoinette. The rats, said the first. The rats, said the second. Yes, yes, we, the rats. What of them? The rats will eat him, said the second hood. Ah, said Antoinette. Mon Dieu! At the thought of being eaten by rats, Despereaux forgot about being brave. He forgot about not being a disappointment. He felt himself heading into another faint, but his mother, who had excellent sense of dramatic timing, beat him to it. She executed a beautiful, flawless swoon, landing right at Despereaux's feet. Now you've done it, said the first hood. It doesn't matter, said the second. Step over her. We have a job to do. Nobody's mother is going to stop us. To the dungeon. To the dungeon, repeated the first hood. But his voice, so deep and certain a moment ago, now shook a tiny bit. He put his paw on Despereaux and tugged him forward. The two hoods and Despereaux stepped over Antoinette. The crowd parted. The mice began again to chant, To the dungeon, to the dungeon, to the dungeon. The drum beat continued. Boom, 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 and Despereaux was led away. At the last moment, Antoinette came out of her faint and shouted one word to her child. That word, reader, was adieu. Do you know the definition of adieu? Don't bother with your dictionary. I will tell you. Adieu is French for farewell. Farewell is not the word that you would like to hear from your mother as you are being led to the dungeon by two oversized mice in black hoods. Words that you would like to hear are, Take me instead. I will go to the dungeon in my son's place. There is a great deal of comfort in those words. But reader, there is no comfort in the word farewell, even if you say it in French. Farewell is a word that, in any language, is full of sorrow. It is a word that promises absolutely nothing.